Welcome, welcome. I am just pinging Ben into the room here. We'll get started shortly. Thanks for being here, Theory and Tierra. We are going to be talking today in the HSP Club about our struggles in doing consistent action, analysis paralysis. Ben is really good at dissecting this topic. I'm excited to share with you his background and how he can support us going through an experiential practice to kind of pull ourselves in space. Hey, Ben.
Hey, Julie.
I'm just getting set up here. Let me put you on as mod.
All right.
And if there's a link that you would like to share or anything, I'll just do some introductions here. And then if that's something you want to add, you're welcome to add a link. If not,
Okay.
as we get going, if there's something that comes to mind that you want to share, you can always add a link later. And I'll just go ahead and I'm just going to, yep, thanks for muting yourself, Ben. So we are going into another room where we are talking about elevating HSP voices. This is a series that we started in October, I think. And we've been doing this series on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Central. We had a bit of a break over the holidays with Thanksgiving. I was traveling and I didn't have the best internet. And hopefully, you guys can hear me clearly. I actually have been having home internet issues today. So I'm hoping nothing goes wrong. I'm just using mobile data. So let me know if I break up or you're not able to hear me okay. Um, but today we are going to meet with Ben. He is an HSP. He is someone I connected with through Clubhouse. And if you're familiar with new acquaintances that you connect with that are HSPs, you tend to gravitate towards each other and have a lot to share with one another. And when we first had our conversation, that was the case for us as well. We were just able to deeply connect and talk about things that really matter to us as HSPs. And I definitely love seeing more men in the HSP club because it tends to be dominated by women. And I know it is an extra tier of, or I should say, another onion layer that has to be pulled back. Being a highly sensitive male is a triple threat. It's just not accepted in our society whatsoever. And I know Ben has a lot of experience sharing and being vulnerable and really just showing up as his true, authentic self. And I really appreciate that about him because we're all on a journey, we're all on a healing path, especially as HSPs. There's a lot that when you learn about this trait, we have to dissect and really dig into to take care of our mental, emotional, physical health and well-being. So, but today we're going to talk about um, Ben has shared with me different things in his work where he is excited to share with us an experimental practice where we can overcome overwhelm, analysis paralysis, and that struggle to take consistent action. And I'm not sure if you can relate to that as an HSP, that energetically and emotionally we can be torn in so many different directions, and as deep processors and deep thinkers we always are trying to make the right decision the first time. So I think this is very true for a lot of HSPs, that we get stuck in these cycles that really don't allow us to shine fully as our true authentic self. And so he's going to talk about how we can better reach that potential inside of us. So really quickly, I'll introduce myself. My name is Julie Staub. I'm an HSP. I learned about this trait in 2018 through the movie Sensitive. And ever since then, I've done a deep dive on Elaine Aron's research. What I love about this trait is that it is backed up by science. There are different biology and mental, emotional things that impact us. It's not a disorder, it's nothing to fix. But the more that you educate yourself about your trait, the better you're going to be of service to yourself and the world around you. So I really speak to making our lifestyle something that leans into our biology instead of rejecting it. So my MO is lifestyle choices, lifestyle choices, lifestyle choices, and definitely healing. Healing is a big part of what my journey has been personally over the last 2 decades before I even knew I was an HSP. So those are the things that I am very excited about. I'm in the process of developing a membership slash course slash program that will be a great resource and tool for HSPs to dive into and get support and also discover more about their traits. So I'll be launching that in 2022, and I'm really excited about that. So if you're interested in connecting with an HSP coach, please follow me, follow the club. I'll definitely be doing rooms here a lot more in 2022. It's just that time of year with the season and the holiday and that shuffle to kind of close out the year that things get a little hairy. So I've been pulling back and working on other things. So that being said, I want to give Ben the opportunity to introduce himself and share a little bit about how he's going to do this experimental practice here. And I should just say really quickly, we'll have a discussion here the first hour or the first half hour between Ben and I. I'll kind of do interview style. And then we'll open up the room for the second half hour to have a discussion, ask Ben questions, or reflect on anything that's been discussed in the room. And then in the last half hour, I'll kind of hand the baton over to Ben, and he will walk us through a practice that you can experience right here and right now. If you're in the room today, or if you're listening as a replay, it's definitely something that you can add to your toolbox because you'll be able to go back to the recording. So with that being said, I would love to just mute myself for a minute and pass the mic to you, Ben, if you'd like to introduce yourself and just talk about what you want to share with us.
Thanks so much, Julie. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun being in rooms with you since we met earlier this year. And just to that point, just first wanted to say, like, when we do meet other HSPs, how beautiful that is. We talked, we had like met quickly, briefly on Clubhouse here, and then we felt pretty aligned, and so we jumped on a call together, and it was like, and I'm curious, for anybody that's met other HSPs, and if you haven't, or if you haven't had that sense of community yet, or created those relationships, know that this is possible for you. But we got on the call, and it was like, it's almost impossible to share everything you want to share, because it's like you're finally meeting this like soul friend that you always kind of wanted and just never quite had or could find. So I've just been really blessed, I feel like, in the past couple of years to have finally found these types of relationships. And Julie, you are obviously one of those, and it's just every time I meet somebody like that and I have a conversation, because as deep feelers, we don't want the surface level crap. We want to have meaningful conversations. It just goes right into that, and there's no BS. We don't have to explain ourselves. We don't have to try to, like, we just understand each other right from the get-go. So anyways, a little bit about that, but it's just like super meaningful to me, and just kind of an aside, and maybe we'll talk about this throughout our discussion today, but this is fueling a lot of where I'm going with my work in the future. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful that we've connected, and really cool that we're in this space doing this now. For me, just to quickly, because you kind of mentioned your background with like learning when you're an HSP and stuff like that. For me, like it's a trait. I've always been one. Um, I'm an empath as well. And I always kind of knew that about myself. I always felt a little bit different. I always knew that I was like just feeling things deeper than others. I could tell that just people weren't having quite the same experience as me. I did feel, as you mentioned, as a man, as a male, I did have moments of, oh, I'm not feeling quite the same as my male peers in this situation. This isn't funny to me. This is, whether it's about a girl or it's about this serious situation, then like, that's not that funny to me. That doesn't feel comfortable, or it's not right, or like, so I always felt a little bit of a disconnect. I still managed to fit in, things like that, which was both a blessing and a curse, because I was able to, I didn't feel like a complete outcast, but one of the things that I've realized and have really sat with a lot recently within the past, like even 6 months, is just how I didn't really truly fit in, because it was easy for me to fit in. I didn't therefore need to do any deeper work finding out who I was. But I did always feel connected to myself. It was always just a little strange to not feel super connected to, like really deeply connected to people around me who I did consider friends, and had supportive people in my life and had a lot of fun. I've always been a happy individual, just always had a smile on my face. And so, yeah, so then let's see, so like 8 years ago, I went to college, got a degree in computer science, like engineering. Like my brain is very logical, analytical, good at math and science, like all that stuff. And so went into engineering and had started to struggle with stress and anxiety in college. School always came very easily to me up until that point. And then college, and especially the college that I was in, was very competitive, and just like destroyed me, because I had no real tools cultivated to, for one, not be good at things, and two, to cope with that amount of stress and anxiety. So yeah, and at that point I was like, I just need to graduate. I just need to like get out of here and things will be better. And then I got a job. I was a business intelligence consultant, and so very white collar, good paying job, everything I'd hoped for. The stress and anxiety came back, because that lifestyle, I had a hard time adapting to that. It felt like it didn't fit. It was high pressure. I was getting emails all the time. I didn't feel like I had space to breathe and to kind of just like live my life. And so after a while, I started to realize, I was like, this just does not, like, I don't want to do this forever. This isn't me. This isn't my purpose here as a human. Again, kind of back to the big thinking and deep feeling aspects of being an HSP. And mind you, during this time, still no real context for being an HSP. That's kind of, I'm weaving that into my story and my background here. And yeah, so at the time I just kind of started to search for like, well, what do I want to do? I feel like I could be doing so much more. I could be impacting people. I could be making a difference in the world. I know I have these gifts to, this desire to help people, but I have a gift to listen and to make people feel understood. And so I just felt like I was wasting that. I just felt like I wasn't, not only was I not enjoying my life and not feeling fulfilled, but I also felt that if I didn't use these gifts, then ultimately others weren't, I wasn't helping others as well. Like me behind a desk wasn't doing anything for anybody. So I ended up, at the time, during that, again, this is 8 years ago, 8.5 years ago, I read the book Quiet by Susan Cain, which is not about HSPs, but it is about introverts. And that was kind of the first book I had read that felt just, I just felt so seen. I felt so validated. And it was really impactful at that time in my life when a lot of things felt kind of confusing. I was like, why can't I, I know I'm intelligent. I know that I'm very capable, but I'd feel like this job is crushing me. Like everybody else is just like going on like this is totally normal and fine. Like, why can't I do this? And so reading that book at the time was really, really meaningful for me in my journey. And so, yeah, so I ended up, I left that job and I got into personal training because I was like super into fitness at the time. I was like, this is the way that I can help people. This is, I can be on like interacting with somebody face to face and be making a change in their life. And it was awesome. It was really, really cool to have that experience, to have something like that was in my mind, like actually be that enjoyable, and to like see like, oh, I can trust my intuition. I can trust the fact that I felt like I needed to leave this job, and it was in fact better. It was a better situation for me, and it felt really aligned. I was making far less money, but I didn't care. I didn't care because it just felt so good. So yeah, so I worked for a gym for a year, and then I started my own business. And by the way, thank you all for kind of hanging out as I go on this story here, because this all kind of really paints the picture here for where I am now and what I do. Um, so I left the gym, I started my own business, and that was kind of even like another quantum leap, it felt like, into what was possible. I was like, oh, I can do something that's aligned and I can make money doing that, and I can do that in my own way. As I'm sure many of you understand, I just could not stand, it was like, even though I loved what I was doing at the gym, I couldn't stand the corporate bureaucracy, like all that crap. And just like, there were a lot of things that I felt I wasn't getting, my clients weren't getting. And so me leaving was like, okay, well, I can make this a win-win situation for both me and my clients. And so that was really cool. It was really, really scary because I didn't have like a full book of clients, but I was like, I'm just going to make the leap. And at the time, didn't really have much of a spirituality practice. But I just did it and was like, I just trust myself. I trust that this will work out somehow, some way. And in fact, it did. I was very much supported. I ended up grabbing some other guy, random guys, like just dumped me a whole bunch of business, and it was really cool. But so yeah, so I did that for a handful of years, and throughout that process, really realized how much I love people and just helping them. And like fitness was a thing, one thing I could be doing with people, but the more that I went along, people were coming to me. I'm seeing them a few times a week, more often than they're seeing certain friends or, most of their family. And so I was getting to know them really well, and, what's going well in their lives, what's not going well in their lives, what their problems are, their hopes, their dreams, like all these things. And that, to me, I just started to really cherish that. And so couple that with a pretty intense health situation a few years ago, and I made the shift into life coaching and just kind of shifted fully into, I was like, I want to help people live up to their potential. That like feeling that I had in my cubicle, and just like knowing that I was meant for more. I wanted to, and then being able to like realize that to an extent, like I wanted to be able to give that to others. I wanted to be able to share that feeling that I had, that was just like, oh, I really am meant for more. I really am capable of making a difference and doing things that feel really meaningful to me. And that, so again, this was 3 years ago, a little over 3.5 years ago, I guess now. at that point in time, with all these health struggles I was going through, like I said, it like really put me on my butt. It was a bunch of like weird stuff, and I still struggle with some chronic things from it. But that was the time when I was first introduced to, I first read, I believe it's Judith Orloff's, what is it, like the Empath Survival Guide. I read that first, and then I was introduced to the idea of being an HSP, and that really helped me understand not only part of what I was going through and how I was experiencing that, but then also gave me this larger context for how I've lived my life and why that's been the case and who I am. And it came at a perfect time because I was really questioning everything during this forced moment of stillness. So yeah, so that was super meaningful. And then, like I said, ever since then, I've kind of just been all in on that work, because I believe, and I know Julie, you share this as well, and this is one of the reasons that we immediately connected, was I truly believe that as HSPs, we have the ability to change the world. There's a reason we all feel like we're meant for more in one sense or another. And this doesn't mean necessarily that we have to be doing some global work or anything like that, but we all have something that we feel, even if that's just being the best mother there ever was, like that is still something that is important and will change the world in some form, some way. And so my mission is now to just empower deep feeling individuals to live up to their potential, whatever that looks like for them. And so, yeah, that's kind of the story. Like I said, thanks all for hanging out. I know I tend to go into a lot of detail. My wife can give me hell for that sometimes, but I'm a visual person, I'm an energetic person, and so I like to kind of paint the picture of, yeah, like who I am and how I got where I am. So Julie, I'll stop now just to give us a little breather. I know you said I can kind of outline what I'll be sharing today, but I just wanted to give you a chance to jump in here if you want.
Yes, thank you. And we can definitely share more about your practice a little bit into our discussion. But as I was just processing and listening to what you were sharing, I want to kind of, there's something that I want to describe, and maybe I don't have the language for it, but I wanted to ask, what does that feeling feel like maybe in your body that says to you, I'm not living up to my full potential? Because I think a lot of times we might get confused about what the ego has to say, or what society says, or what our friends are doing, and having to keep up and compare and all of that. But like, if we were to get to the heart of the matter as HSPs, which we know how to do very quickly, we know how to get intimate into these kind of conversations and do that deep dive, how would you describe it to someone who maybe isn't sure if, am I listening to the right thing within me that says I'm meant for more? Or, how are we influenced by those different tugs? And maybe what was the tug for you that made you feel like, hey, this just isn't it for me?
Yeah, thank you. I love this question because, as you said, it's really important, crucial, really, to be able to discern this feeling over, as you mentioned, the thoughts or fears. Even we can take a lot of actions based on fears, or we live in a world where we're driven by FOMO because somebody somewhere is doing this cool thing, or they're having that success, or we want to look this way because of that. So So yes, this is, one of our superpowers as HSPs is that we are deeply intuitive. And as you and I both talk about all the time, is like it's hugely important for us to be in touch with our bodies. And this is a perfect example of why, is because our intuition and our body are interconnected. They're kind of one and the same, so to speak. And as you were talking, I was just kind of letting what came up for me rather than trying to search for an answer. And the feelings that were coming up for me was like it's gentle yet persistent. Whereas these more ego-based things are going to be a little bit louder, a little bit harsher, a little bit more abrupt. There's going to be more of a feeling of, like I said, like FOMO or scarcity around it. Whereas this other feeling is more of one of just like yearning was the word that was coming to mind. It's just like this kind of like deep craving or curiosity for like, yeah, but this would be so cool, or oh, this would be so interesting, or I just feel pulled to that thing. Um, so as it relates to our bodies, being able to, like I said, kind of feel into the energy of it. That's what I was trying to describe there, is like it's something that's going to be quieter, something that's going to be calmer. That doesn't mean it can't get loud. If you continue to ignore it, for many HSPs, then this can manifest into some type of dis-ease. And I'm sure you know this very well with your practice and the things that you're really passionate about. But that can start to manifest itself in anxiety and depression and actual physical issues, burnout. And so also then being able to recognize these signs is kind of important. It's not necessarily the same thing, but it can be connected if it's ignored long enough. And so I guess then what I would say to kind of finish that answer is just like, if you're starting to feel those tugs, or they are there, noticing, like actually being still enough to sit with that and be honest about it, because a lot of times these things are really scary to admit to ourselves. Like, yes, I want to quit my job, or yes, I want to leave my partner, or yes, I want to like move across the world. Like, whatever it may be for you, allowing yourself to like actually acknowledge that this is true for me. Like, this is the thing that's wanting to come through. It doesn't mean I have to act on it right away, but acknowledging that feeling is kind of the first step.
I love that. And I think that's a powerful first step. And I think for HSPs, we tend to have a lot of self awareness. We tend to dive into those uncomfortable feelings because obviously we want to feel more comfortable. And we, have that. I guess that range or that space to really dive into those matters and really look at it from either a heart center or even an intellectual center. But it's still just carving out that path and continuing to create the path that supports us and supports our vision and where we want to go and who we want to be. And I think that's another thing I know Elaine Aaron has touched on is that the work that we do as HSPs needs to be purposeful and it needs to be fulfilling. That is so, so important for us. And I've had many discussions with other HSPs who believe that we are here to change the world. That is a deep belief of mine as well. And I think after coming through this pandemic, kind of this alternative way of being. We are the leaders, we are the healers, we're the ones that have been doing this work for decades before the pandemic. And now there's a group, or I should say, a part of the population that's just starting to explore after maybe being very numbed out by whatever, in their life that they were doing to distract themselves from their true feelings or their intuition or their emotions about how they feel, because they just kept themselves busy doing the status quo. And I think HSPs, because we are so we experience everything through our environment, we're deeply feeling everything. We were never able to just discount or completely numb out. There was always something inside of us that felt that you know there was so much inside of us to share, but we didn't necessarily feel safe in the world. And so that is another reason I think HSPs struggle to reach their potential, because we're constantly in that space of bringing balance to taking care of ourselves and creating a lifestyle that looks different than everyone else, or I should say 80% of the population, and then dealing with that grief of not being like everyone else, and having to just take that extra time to slow down and to go at our own pace. It's a constant struggle to feel like you're always left behind, or you're constantly feeling the need to catch up. And then that comparison is just the huge thief of joy, and I know for HSPs it can be excruciating. um, so I just wanted to kind of open up the question here, since we're moving into the second half hour, and I would love to continue talking with Ben on this as well. But if there's anyone in the audience, and I'll turn hand raising on, that would like to share their journey or your journey in reaching your potential, and recognizing that there could be a pattern with us HSPs in terms of how we navigate, and knowing that our path is very unique. So even though we have this trait in common, our path is going to look very different between all of us. And I think sharing those different journeys will help other HSPs feel connected to finding our own unique path, whatever that looks like for us. So I would just love to hear from anyone that would like to share how that journey has looked for you, and maybe different ways that you've navigated it to feel more successful on that path. And maybe even some of the setbacks that have taught you lessons, so that you're able to heal and move through something that may be holding you back or making you feel stuck. So I would love to just mute myself. And I know, Ben, you'll probably have some words of reflections to what I just shared, but I also will pass the mic to Tanya. But I'll go ahead and mute myself and just create.
Yeah, thanks for that, Julie. To add on to what you were saying, there are two other things that came up for me that kind of pose a hurdle to moving towards our full potential for HSPs specifically, which one is people pleasing, and that can be coupled with caring for others as well. And so I'll come back to that in a second, but then also just a drive to do well and to succeed. I'm what I've kind of termed a capital A achiever. I have friends and clients who are like that as well. And so that's not out of the norm for HSPs, is like we do the right things. We do what we're told, and we see like, oh, these are the steps you follow to be successful or be happy or whatever. And we're very good at that. We're like, okay, we'll go do it. So that can block us, because we're so busy following instructions that we aren't tapping into ourselves. We're following some blueprint rather than being tapped into ourselves and our intuition. And so that's been a big part of my work, really, is helping people to create that space to come back to themselves and understand what their soul is telling them, and speaking to them, back to the intuition thing. But yeah, just to quickly hit on the other piece before I pass it over to Tanya here. People pleasing, I think many in this space probably have an understanding of, and just how that can lead to self-abandonment, essentially. We don't know ourselves well when we are constantly trying to please others, to keep the waters calm, to not rock the boat, to avoid conflict, all that stuff. But I also wanted to add in the other side of that, which seems a little bit more benevolent. And it usually comes from that place of, I genuinely want to help others. I genuinely want to be there for others. I want to take care of others. And that is a beautiful thing. It's an incredible capacity, a gift that we all have as HSPs. But it's a slippery slope, because if you're too caught up in that, then again, it ends up becoming self-abandonment. So just kind of wanted to mention that there. I know for sure for myself, that was a big piece of my journey early on. But yeah, so those are some things there, but really appreciate everything else you said as well. That fulfillment and purpose is really important. And I just kind of wanted to throw out a caveat here of like, it doesn't need to be through, like, you don't have to go start a business like I did, or you don't have to, your job doesn't have to be your life's purpose. That's not ever been my kind of message or shtick. But there should be some element of engagement in what you do, and then definitely creative pursuits and passions are really, really important to come back to. So yeah, thank you for that, Julie, and I will go ahead and open this up and let Tanya share her experiences. By the way, great to see you here.
Good morning, Julie and Ben and everybody else in the room. Thank you. It's always a pleasure being here in this space with you guys. Gosh, that you guys touched on so much. Like, I know I'm not even going to be able to touch all of the things that you've shared on, but some of the first things that I just wanted to express that, very hit home with me was how, Ben, you had expressed when you and Julie got on your first call together, how it was as if you had known each other forever, and you just dove deep from the get-go. And that's when you found your soul fractal family, right? And that is such a beautiful feeling, to be like, oh my gosh, I can finally be myself. I have finally found somebody that can meet me in these spaces and who enjoys this as well, and there is nothing more beautiful than that. And that is very much what this space, both this space and the room that you also share, Ben, have really helped me to step into and embrace even more of that aspect of myself, and putting myself out there and meeting other HSPs and being in community. I realized that's been a big piece of it for me, is I didn't have anybody in my world other than my partner, who's in this room. Hi, Brian, by the way. And, he's my only other person in my life, so to speak, who is also an HSP who gets it. And so when you meet others who get it, it is this sense of relief and this sense of oh, finally. So I very much agree and love that you brought that aspect up. For me, with my journey, I definitely followed in the footsteps of, you should be this or you should be that, in regards to a career. And I, am in the medical field and have been in the medical field for a very long time, 15 plus years. But all of that was corporate. I was married to somebody who was very much you gotta make a certain amount of money, so to speak, or you gotta have all these benefits, or you gotta, if you get a government job, that's the ultimate in, having a job. And, and when I left all of that behind, I had people looking at me so confused. You had the perfect marriage, you had the perfect life, you guys had, and I'm like, yeah. And I wasn't happy. And it took me literally leaving that whole dynamic, moving in with my mother and living with my mother for 5 years, And that in itself was challenging. Just, doing all of that, leaving all of that, because I had no clue where I was going to go, what I was going to do. And it was the best freaking decision I made. I paid off all my debt living with my mom. That way I could afford to live by myself, because as an HSP, I enjoy living by myself. I didn't want to fucking live with any roommates. I just was like, nope, not having it. And, and lived by myself for a couple years. And while still working in corporate, still wasn't happy, found that I was looking outside of myself a lot of the times for my happiness. And, it's been within the last couple of years learning to look within myself and realize the happiness starts within. I can't look outside of myself for anything or anybody to make me happy. And that was where a lot of like my own truth came from, of learning I am here to light the way for others. I'm here to share my gifts. And I didn't really know what those gifts were until probably within the last year, to be honest. And I'm still discovering them today. But I now work in an alternative healthcare clinic, which is something I'm passionate about. You both know that. I've shared that in multiple rooms. And it's, I'm passionate about that aspect, while also I know that that isn't the place that I'm meant to be forever. I am working to create my own business in a couple of modalities that I love and I'm also passionate about. Obviously, one of them is human design. The other one is called the Spiral. It's the emotional, energetic clearing of stuck emotions within your body. And that is something that, I know is going to come to fruition. I'm working towards that for 2022. And while I don't know if that's something that I will do full time, I do know that it brings me meaning to help other people get out of their own damn way, to help others, release those limiting beliefs and like these pieces that are keeping them stuck in these trauma responses or these fear responses, the ego taking over, just all of these pieces. And so that is what is very meaningful to me, is being able to help others, because those modalities have truly helped me. So I want nothing more than to share that with other people, especially HSPs, because I feel like we have so much more, I don't want to say difficulty, but that's the only word that's coming out for me. It can just be more of a challenge for us, I feel like, because this world is not necessarily conducive for HSPs, so yeah, just sharing that work. And it's been, it has come with its challenges for sure, of not knowing what my purpose is, but feeling it deeply, and being like, what is it? What am I meant to do? Like, feeling like I'm meant for more, like you guys expressed. And today I'm clearer on what that more looks like. And I appreciate Ben pointing to, like, it doesn't have to be in what you do for a living. So I appreciate like that reminder, because sometimes I can get caught up in thinking it needs to quote look a certain way when it doesn't. That is just a reminder to surrender to the process of how the universe is guiding me, that I'm not the one that's driving the bus. Just I'm along for the ride, so to speak. So I want to thank you both deeply for sharing everything that you've shared here. It's given me a lot of stuff to chew on.
Thank you, Tanya. I always love when you're sharing, and you're always so vulnerable, and you're willing to just kind of share with others what your path looks like. And it really got me thinking about just the resilience and the courage of HSPs. And, I feel like the world a lot of times paints sensitive people as like weak or fragile, or like you have to walk on eggshells around them before they burst. But I think more than anything, what I see when I connect with HSPs and deeply learn their story is that we are a group of very resilient people, because we have experienced over and over and over again, either that disappointment or that letdown or being misunderstood, or just taking on those emotions and feelings that a lot of people don't even get in touch with. And when we are continually faced with obstacles and challenges just to be in this world, that creates a lot of resilience. And I think that's why, too, in those circumstances that can, really be heart-wrenching or troublesome or difficult, we're the ones that remain calm because we're used to grounding in that chaos and in that world that really isn't supportive of us. And so I think that is also another reason why it's difficult for HSPs to just be content with the status quo, and why we do need to carve out our own lifestyle, and make our own path, whether that's being the most potential in your creative endeavors or your financial endeavors or your health endeavors. There always seems to be a lot of challenges to get there, and through that learning experience, we just get that depth. We are like forced into the deep sea, and a lot of people just don't even scratch the surface in their journey, because they're just in that whirlwind, that fast-paced life. And I think too, with the pandemic, it's been so interesting to see that part of the population that is kind of numbed out or tuned out kind of have that fragility put on their lap for the first time in their life. And, to be able to lean on highly sensitive people because we have that ability to be resilient during hard times. So there's just so much here that we've dug into, of course, deep dive. I would love to let Ben and Tanya reflect on anything before we move on to theory. But I just love this discussion, and thanks again for being vulnerable and sharing your story. It's been a great thing to witness. So
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Tanya. And like Julie said, always appreciate when you're here and when you share. Just love your energy so much. The things that were kind of like sticking out to me as you were speaking is that this is a journey. And I think one of the very best things that we can do as HSPs is to learn how to love that. And even like as you were speaking, Julie, especially because there are often challenges and hurdles for us that, as you said, usually just contribute to our evolution so much. And so even though at the time they suck, they're usually really meaningful. But so being able to let go of there being a destination, and this is actually the basis of how I like talking about things, and specifically my Meant for More program, which is most people live life as a blueprint. Like, these are the rules, this is what you do, it's linear, you succeed, you retire, you die. Whereas for big thinkers and deep feelers, as I call us, I believe that we succeed and can get so much more out of life when we can see it as an adventure. Just one big, long adventure that we are, we're going to scale not one mountain, but many. And our goal isn't to reach the top of that mountain and sit there. It's to go scale another mountain because that's interesting and because we want to be enjoying that. And it is going to be hard, but it's going to have that meaning that we've been talking about. So yeah, I just thought that was like really sticking out to me as you were talking. And then, yeah, of course, as you said, just having people to be on that journey with, because it is a challenging journey, is, of course, just incredibly meaningful. So yes, thank you so much for your share. So appreciate it, and so happy to have you here.
Thank you both so much for such beautifully heartfelt and kind reflections. of, you finding value in how I show up. I definitely love I always love the energy of this space, but something that you just said, Ben, really, I think gave me something even more to consider is like looking at it from the adventure aspect. And that is exactly what I really needed to hear and be reminded of today, because I can definitely struggle to, when I am struggling, I can get caught up in not looking at it through that lens. I can get lost in the struggle, if you will. And so I appreciate that like reframe. And yeah, it's a beautiful adventure. So again, just thank you so much. And I am done talking, and I will pass.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Julie and Ben. Thank you for holding this space. Very appreciated. Ben said something before, but unfortunately, somehow it cut at my end because I was just hand raising and something went wrong. But I would love to hear his words again about when you said that people pleasing and following a script. That sounded very interesting. I feel sometimes in situations maybe where I feel observed or judged, that the script comes in very strong or too strong. And then it's a bit like having one foot on the gas and one foot on the brakes, which is the script. So that's my first thing. I would like to hear Ben talking about again, and maybe Julie if you have something to say about it. And the other thing is, in my journey, I think I suppressed the sensitivity a lot in order to fit in for a long, long time. And I'm sorry for the background noise. I'm in a hotel lobby. And I, when discovering the whole topic of HSP, this suppressed sensitivity came out probably very strong, and I'm struggling right now a lot with just getting through the day. I think there's a lot of overwhelm. I'm traveling currently, so I feel it much stronger. And there's a lot of, with the overwhelm, also sometimes fog in the brain, I think. Just you forget details, you're not so attentive to details, etc. So on these two aspects, I would love to hear your input.
Yeah, thanks for that theory. The people pleasing piece is essentially we want to be very careful. I mean, as humans, but specifically as HSPs, because we're kind of prone to this, to self-abandoning. That's a term you have used repeatedly now, because I think it's really, really important to understand the immense impact that can have when we're doing that, and that can happen in so many ways, in big ways and in little ways. And the more that we can, we shouldn't have shame around that. The more that we can see that clearly when we are doing that, the more that we can, it's the first step to coming back to ourselves. And so, even the fact that you are mentioning that that's kind of resonant and you feel like you've noticed that before is really important. And I just kind of wanted to applaud you for that, because it's, it's easy to be like, oh, well, I don't people please, or I don't do things to make other people happy. So within that, the first step is always just the awareness and really paying attention to when you do it. And the more you pay attention, the more you'll get to notice it. And maybe in certain situations or with certain people. And then from there, you can start to notice a little bit more of the why, like why it's happening. Maybe in this situation, this person or this type of person has always had a little bit of a pull over you, or you can just start to notice the energy of it, of why you are kind of giving your power away in that moment, even if it's in little ways. So just starting to notice that is really the most important thing to me. And then over time, being intentional about realizing you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that to be safe. You know, a lot of times when we're doing this, it's coming from a place of feeling unsafe when in our formative years. And as fully grown adults, realizing that, wait a second, I don't actually have to do this, or I can handle conflict, or I can handle letting this person down. And I don't necessarily want to. It won't necessarily feel good, but it's something that is possible. So yeah, for me, the awareness is a really big part of that. I'll let Julie respond here too, and then Theory, if there's anything we missed, then I'd be happy to follow.
Maybe, Ben, what you said about the script?
Yes, I did not say anything about a script. At least I don't remember. Did you?
I think you said blue.
Oh, got it. Okay, got it. Thank you. Yes. So this, one of the things about us as HSPs is we are very good at rule following. We're very good at following directions, checking boxes. Part of this is that we like safety. Our nervous systems like certainty, and they like safety. And so following this blueprint is very logical to us. It makes sense. We just get it, and it's like, okay, there we go. Like, I understand. And it's very easy to follow through with that. But then any ambiguity, uncertainty, gray area, those things can feel ungrounding for us, because it doesn't feel as safe in our nervous systems, throughout the course of our lives. That's not something that's felt super safe, whether that's been something that's implicit through our own personal experiences, or explicit, you shouldn't quit your job because that's a stupid thing to do. It's not a secure way to live your life. Any number of things. So with that, just being aware of when you are sticking to kind of a blueprint lifestyle, or the script that somebody has handed you for how you should live, and leaning into questioning that a little bit more, not for the sake of being a rebel or questioning, but from a place of truly being curious for yourself and how you experience life. Like, do you actually want to follow that blueprint, or would you rather go off and try some other thing for a couple years and then maybe come back, or get another job, or move to a different part of the world, or something like that? So that would be my response.
Thank you. Very interesting. I think it's connected. The blueprint and the people pleasing can be connected. It's like you people please to check boxes, so your nervous system can feel more secure by pleasing others. You're expecting a certain response, which in 80% of the cases, or 90% of the cases, come in a certain way that you expect, and then you feel sure. And maybe this, even if you take it a step further, affects also the way how you believe in God, or how you deal with God. You can even please God in order to have not too much uncertainty in return. And there the questioning is already a little bit more complex. So that's what's coming to my mind.
Thank you for that response, because that really brought up something for me, which was that, I'll just say it straight here, like as HSPs, we like people to pat us on the back. It's something that feels good to us. And I don't think that's something we should be ashamed of, but it is something that we should be very, very aware of, and our relationship with that. Am I doing that because I genuinely want to make that person happy, or to give myself a sense of pride, or is that from a place of just wanting to be told that I'm doing good all the time? Because chasing that pat on the back, chasing that feeling, which, there's a psychological path for that, or a reason that we do that, because we didn't get a certain amount of love or acknowledgement when we were younger, not in the way that we wanted, at least. It is very important, as you're saying, to notice when we're doing that as adults, and being able to decide whether or not that is something that we are doing for ourselves, or it's something that we're just kind of doing reflexively so that we feel.
This is Julie. I love this conversation, and I love that so many of you have hopped up here on stage. And I know we should be shifting gears into the experimental practice, but I really want to hear from you. It's really important to engage in the discussion part of this. And since so many of you have hopped up here, I hope Ben is a little flexible, and maybe we can shorten that part of it and just continue to hear what everyone is interested in sharing. I will go ahead and pass the mic to Maria, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this and any reflections you have on this.
Hi everyone, my name's Maria. I'm a highly sensitive person. I love these discussions, and I'm so glad that I was able to join in today. I wasn't going to say anything because I just was in listening mode, but then Ben said something about the mountain piece, about the journey, and how we sometimes might get a little impatient and just want to figure things out. And that just really spoke to me, and similar to what Tanya was saying, I think that's a message I definitely needed to hear today. And I just wanted to share with you guys that it's so funny, because in one of my brain spotting sessions I did in the past couple months, my brain does this really weird, when it's trying to work through trauma, it does this really creative thing. And I was like, my therapist is gonna think I'm crazy. I'm like, I saw images on the wall. It's I don't know if I'm sounding a little weird right now, but it's fine. I saw little images, a little cartoon on the wall of my relationship with my husband, and how I've been trying to not force him to understand me, but just kind of I feel like as a highly sensitive person, we each go on this journey, and because he's also a highly sensitive person, we've been together for 18 years since we were in high school. I feel like our journeys got really meshed together. And so I was trying to identify oh my gosh, what's going on here? Going through this whole brain spotting session, and I saw this little cartoon on the wall, it was moving, of me going on this mountain over and over again, and how I get so caught up in this, oh my gosh, this is so hard, and why is life so hard? And I keep trying to drag him onto my mountain, where that's not his journey. And instead, he's waiting for me at the bottom of my mountain, going around on the ground so that he can get on this little boat, so that when I jump off the mountain, he can be right there with me. And so it's the weirdest thing, but you said that, Ben, and it just really kind of resonated with me that we are all in our own journeys. And there are times when, as highly sensitive people or not highly sensitive people, we come together in a way that makes sense for us. And, sometimes I might try to go around the mountain and get on a boat with him, and, that analogy or whatever metaphor. But that's not really what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to go off in this mountain and figure things out by myself, and then come together with him. And so I have to share this with you, Julie and Ben. I have a little cartoon that I actually drew up after that session, because it was weird. But it just really resonated with me that it is a journey, and that we are here to kind of as guideposts for each other, to check in with each other, to say, hey, I'm here. Have you been here before? Because I'm kind of lost, and I suck at maps and things like that, because I just what I believe is ADHD. I get lost very easily, I should say. so it's really cool to see people who have gone through similar processes, are going through something similar, or you can just kind of check in with each other and say, hey, I remember that place, or this is where I'm going now, this is where I've been, and just kind of like a, hey, me too, but in my own way. And I'm rambling, but I just wanted to say that, and I can't wait to see where this all takes us. Like sometimes I think about where will I be 5 years from now, and so much has happened, in the world in the last year or so, the year and a half. I just think about you guys a lot. That sounds really creepy. I don't think about you guys a lot in like a weird, creepy way, but I think about us as a group, as highly sensitive people. Like I wonder where we're going to be 5 years from now, and it just gets me really excited because I see us all standing on different mountains, just like waving at each other. We're like, you made it, woohoo! So I don't know. Just thought I'd share that with you guys and tell you that I'm so grateful to be here. And thank you for all of you for sharing your journeys with me. I'm Maria.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Maria. I absolutely love that. Thank you for joining as well. I was really happy to see you in here. I know it's been a while since we've been in a space together. But I love that. I love the visual, and I love, like, I shared this in one of the rooms when we were talking, or at least one of them, in one of these other rooms with Julie, where I was just like, a lot of times as HSPs, like, we just do weird shit. Like, we experience weird things, we see weird things, think weird things, and I love that. Like, I think that's like so important for us to embrace, because it's like, for me, it's like that's how we make sense of or experience the world. And just because it feels strange or bizarre or whatever, it's like it makes sense, and that's like to us in that moment. And so anyways, yeah, I love the visual and everything. And it truly, I love the metaphor so much, because it just makes so much sense to me. Is like, and it so fits us as HSPs too, right? In like a literal sense, is like, we are just stop and smell the roses people. So like, why, if we're not living our lives that way, in on like a foundational level, it doesn't have to be, at all times. And yes, we live in the real world and have to, I know you're a parent and you're busy. We have to make money, we have to provide, like all those things, but there's still like a way that we can go about doing that. And yeah, being in community and like sharing our journeys together is just so important, so that we can be there for each other and kind of lean on each other when things do feel really hard, or like climbing that mountain is maybe going to be impossible. So
I love that too. And I have been messaging Ben on the back channel here. And since so many of you were willing to hop up on the stage and join in discussion, we are going to go further in discussion. And Ben is going to work on putting a link to the practice, because we may not have time for that. But I really do think this is such an engaging topic. And I think HSPs can really relate to this topic. It's so funny, you guys kept bringing up the word mountain, and all I do is look at Theory's thumbnail of a mountain. I was like, there's the mountain that we're talking about, the visual. But I also too agree with you, Maria, in sense that I have been really fortunate to connect and deepen relationships with HSPs through this club, through Clubhouse. And I'm so grateful that I was able to create the club with this title in mind, because I knew HSPs would be able to find me and find the club. And through that community, I mean, I just have a deeper sense of who I am and what I can achieve, and not settling for maybe when I didn't have people to connect with and share about my personal experience, and I was living it all alone. It was very difficult to see the next step in front of my face. But now I have this beautiful community of HSPs that have allowed me to feel seen and supported, and allows me to go further in that realm, that journey of meeting my potential. So I just applaud all of you for coming on stage and being vulnerable and sharing your journey. And I would love to hear from everyone here on stage. So just for the sake of time, I will pass the mic off to Rachel. Thanks for being here, Rachel.
Good morning. Oh, it's morning for me. I know it's not for everyone. I always do that. It's so good to see your guys's, pictures, I guess, because it's not your face in real life, but and hear your voices. Oh my gosh, there's so many good things that have been said in here that similar to what I think Tanya was saying, like I almost don't even know where to start. Sorry if you can hear my dog drinking water in the background. I'm gonna move. But yeah, so first of all, Maria, I loved what you shared about us being on a mountaintop and like waving at one another. I felt like that was really, really special. And it, in typical empath HSP fashion, that really just hit me right in the feels. And I was like, that's so nice. I was like just loving it and really, really into that visual. And I feel like that's really cool. And you know what? Like, I actually do also often think of other HSPs and just, I think all of us together, we're in it together in one way or another, even though we're having our individual experiences. So I loved what you said, Maria, about, thinking of us often, because I feel kind of the same way. I think of, that there's so many others in the world and other people that might feel alone or might, be, like Ben said, trying to live by that blueprint and kind of find their own way. And I think we all have done that in one way or another. So yeah, the big thing that stuck out to me, I think was when Ben was talking about, being such, like we're comfortable with giving, we give a lot of ourselves, give our energy, want to make others happy, and goes along with people pleasing. And I was just having a conversation with an HSP friend yesterday about this. And it's really fascinating because I think for so long, I think it is just part of who we are. I think it's just part of how we built of how we're built is we genuinely want to help others, be there for others, make others' lives easier. And I think it comes from a place of us knowing the challenges we face. And we're like, well, we want to help someone else. We don't want them to feel down or them to feel XYZ. And so it's, well intentioned, but it also can take away from us or cause us to kind of sacrifice our own needs. And I know for myself, for so long, part of my journey was really understanding I didn't have to give 200% of my energy to other people and leave nothing for myself. And for a long time, I was completely unconscious of it. I didn't realize that I wasn't listening to the cues of my body, that I wasn't checking in with myself, that, I just didn't have those tools and I didn't know I needed to do that. I just always thought something was wrong with me. And that I needed, the blueprint thing. Like I thought, oh, well, I need to be okay being around family for 9 hours straight with 20 people in my house and that I should be able to deal with it and that whatever, I would judge myself. And so when I really started to realize that I don't have to do that and that I can leave something for myself and I can give people love and compassion from afar or say some words and take some time and leave a lot more for myself, it just changed so much for me. I felt like I felt like more whole. And it sounds kind of weird. Or maybe it does, maybe it doesn't to other people, but um, I just didn't realize that I like was really missing a piece of myself. It almost makes me emotional to think about because I was just reflecting on it a lot yesterday, but it was like I really lost, I think, a part of who I was by just constantly giving to others. And again, it's like it comes from a good place, but it's like where did I fit into the mix? And so nowadays obviously I really prioritize like my wellness, my self-care, and I don't have any issues saying, hey, I think I'm going to stay home instead of, go to dinner or something like that. Like I just really need this time for myself. And I think also having community like this and having other people who are empathic or have the HSP trait or just understand helped me over time to be able to speak those needs and be really held and supported and seen in that. And of course, not everybody was understanding. As we all know, it can go that way. But I think finding spaces like that, and that's why I think this is so powerful, is that this is such a space to really say what's on your mind, say how you feel, share your experience where you're going to be met with love and support and lots of light. And I think that helps to build that muscle of being true to yourself and letting your authenticity and who you are genuinely at heart shine, and without the fear of backlash or fear of that. So that getting a meditation at 11, so I did an alarm go off. But yeah, that's kind of my journey, and I say this every time, but I'm so appreciative for this space. Julie, I think you creating this was incredible. And Ben, I always love hearing what you have to say as well and what everybody else shared. It's just so powerful and so incredible. So I will leave it at that since I just riffed for a while. But this is Rachel, and
Oh, there we go. Oh, Rachel, so nice to see you here. I know it's so funny. Well, both, Maria, I know you felt kind of silly about it, but like you were saying, Rachel, like it just makes me so happy to be sharing this space with you guys, because it has been a little while since we were all in the same space together. And so I totally agree, and totally is kind of like speaking to what we're all saying, and just how meaningful it is to have these relationships. And I think that's one of the cool things is like time can pass, but we can come back in a space and just feel very connected, even though, as you mentioned, like we're on our own personal journeys, but we can kind of immediately, to use Maria's visual, like, look over at the mountain next to us and be like, oh, hey, like I see you. And just to add a piece of language that's been really, really helpful for me recently with, spaces like these, is what I've realized is that having people like you guys, having other HSPs in my life, other big thinkers and deep feelers, those people, all of you, are mirrors for me. And I know myself better now because of you. And that to me is just like, kind of like you were saying, Rachel, like just makes me emotional and has been making me emotional. It's so fucking beautiful that in these spaces we come to know ourselves when we do have these mirrors around us, and these people that will really reflect back who we truly are. So yes, just a shout out of gratitude there to all of you, and Julie, again, kind of like you were saying, Rachel, for creating this space, because it is really.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Rachel. And I love that visual of being a mirror for one another. I think that's huge, because I think most of us as HSPs have not really had like-minded people to bounce off of and to show up and be a part of that reflection process, because we can easily go into our inner thoughts and our inner world. But when you don't have contrast to that, it can feel like a slippery slope. So I just appreciate, everyone that comes into this group and has found it beneficial. It's just super exciting for me, because so many years I thought there was something wrong with me. And living up to this potential was part of that wound of feeling like I was broken. I don't want to go and do a 9 to 5 job. I don't want to go buy a house and do the mortgage thing, or, just my lifestyle choices, were led by an inner guidance system that other people didn't have access to. And I know my path is unique, but I think for HSPs, we're just always trying to figure out that path, because it is different than 80% of the population. And having a group of HSP cheerleaders around is a really great benefit for that journey. So I just appreciate all of you for being here and this has been quite a year on Clubhouse, developing this club and going with all of the changes that Clubhouse has brought on and just consistently showing up. And it's been such a huge reward just to do that, just to show up as myself, my imperfect self, and know that I will be seen, heard, and accepted because there are other people like me who get it. So I just thank you all for being here. And I would love to pass the mic off to, am I saying Mutaz? Please tell me how to pronounce your name. This is Julie and I'm complete.
Thank you very much, Julie. It's Mutasim here. Hello, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks to Anneli down there for inviting me into this room. I haven't been on a Clubhouse room for a really long time. And I'm really glad that I came. There's so much warmth in this discussion, and I truly feel like I belong in this group of people. And it's not very common for a lot of us, right, to really feel like you belong. So, yeah, it's been a nice evening in Sweden, listening to all of you. What I have to share might be a bit off track, just a bit off track from the flow of conversation, because I raised my hand a while ago, and then, of course, the conversation flowed nicely. But I just wanted to share a reminder that I give myself a lot, and that could be useful for a lot of us. It's that sometimes we need to change our own narrative, and by change I mean revise it on a regular basis, because it's really easy to fall into the negative side, to get a lot of bias about our own selves, about who we are and what our strengths are. So when we seek other HSPs and we want to find people of our own tribe, sometimes at the back of our heads we feel like we are looking for co-sufferers, like people who constantly go through the same difficulties as we do. So but probably we shouldn't always or as commonly see ourselves as victims or the lesser people, as it's easy to feel when you're surrounded by people who don't understand you. But rather, we should try to focus a bit more on seeing ourselves as people with unique qualities, right? And as with all qualities, all traits, all properties, as however you say it, it always has two sides. Sometimes they act in favor of us, and sometimes they act against us, given the context. So if someone is very sensitive, it always has its ups and downs. And I bet everyone can look back and figure out a big list of those moments when you wish you didn't feel so much, and then you were glad that you felt so much. So while it's normal to feel misunderstood, our sensitivity to all the details that are seemingly unnoticeable to others also make us much more in touch with a whole spectrum of thoughts and emotions than other people do. So if we happen to call our sensitivity as our weakness, sometimes we also need to keep reminding ourselves that that is exactly where our strengths come from, and why it's easy for us to jump onto the protection and preservation of others as well in difficult times, because of the extent to which we can put ourselves in their shoes. So I guess I'm trying to say is it's important that we keep a check on our narrative, that us being HSPs are neither simply our weaknesses or simply our strengths, but rather unique qualities that help us travel through life in a very rare but wonderful way. And also, just to end, if this helps someone, I struggled with myself a lot before I knew who I was, before I knew the term HSP. I just knew that I feel a lot and I was uncomfortable being this vulnerable. It took me years. I'm on the other side of 30 now. So until my late 20s, it was difficult. It was a very difficult journey to be so misunderstood. And so if it helps someone, the way I sometimes keep myself from going off balance or losing track is that I assign myself as my own government. And by that I mean I talk to myself. And I'm taking a risk here. I believe this is not a room where I'll be misunderstood for saying that I talk to myself. So I talk to myself. I literally talk to myself as my own observer and guardian, a person who is aware of my strengths, my weaknesses, the past mistakes and can guide me from a simulated third person's point of view. So maybe those are details for another day, but I just wanted to pass these points to you that maybe because we feel so much, we are also capable of looking at ourselves from outside of ourselves and be our own guide, because it's hard for us to find that guide in someone else. We are lucky if we do, but we can't rely on anybody to be our constant 24/7 guide. So since we can feel ourselves so well, we also know ourselves very well. And as long as we become our own guardian and preserver, I think we can go through life a lot more beautifully, and it will feel a lot less lonely because you never leave your own side, right? Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you so much for that, Mutassim. I really don't have too much to add because I love what you were saying there, that the beautiful parts about us do come from the same parts of us that can cause us pain or challenge. And yeah, the more that we can see that as the beauty in that and the kind of fullness and richness that that brings to our lives, the better off that we are. And I appreciate the talking to ourselves as well. One of the things that, like, I do this to an extent, and one of the things that I've been playing with, and this is, would be a rabbit hole, so we won't go down it now, but I just wanted to mention it because it's been really interesting for me, is to also talk out loud to the universe, spirit, God, like whatever feels good to you. That for me has been really interesting because I often find that I get answers in that sense as well. And so whether that's my intuition, whether that's the universe speaking back to me, like, it doesn't really matter in that moment, because all I know is that I feel supported, and it does feel really good to have that kind of ability to feel safe and to feel guided within oneself or within the bigger picture. So thank you so much for that, and thank you so much for being here just in general. Really appreciate those of you who have waited a bit to speak. Just really, really meaningful to have you share this.
And with just time kind of running out here, I know Ben has to hop off in just 3 minutes. I can kind of carry over here for a few minutes after 12:30, but I really want to hear from Tanya and see what you wanted to contribute to the conversation here, and then we'll wrap up. And if Ben, you have to hop off before we can um, get to the end of the discussion, please do so. But I also wanted to mention that Ben has put a link here at the top to his guided audio, which he would have demonstrated here in the room. But our discussion has been so rich, I didn't want to stray from the discussion. So he has kindly left the link here on the top. And please do go check it out. I've experienced it myself. It's very soothing and eye-opening, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. So go check it out. And I also want to plug Ben's club, Big Thinkers, Deep Feelers. Am I getting it correct? I might have reversed it, but you'll see his club at the bottom of his profile, and he has great discussions that benefit HSPs and empaths. So make sure you give him a follow and check out his club as well. So with that, I will pass the mic on to Tanya. Thanks for.
Hi, thank you so much. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Julie and Ben, so much. I more or less have a quick question. I am a triple whammy, so that means I am an HSP, I am 94% introvert, ISFJT to be exact, and I'm also an empath. And I feel like I've accepted myself as I am. However, I am in a leadership position in project management where I attend large meetings and I have a lot of people depending on me. And my role is basically being a constant fixer and problem solver. I do find myself needing constant validation. I obviously have a lack of confidence, and I'm very sensitive to others' personalities and emotions. So I'm just curious if you can recommend any steps or ideas or things to do to overcome that fear that I have in those situations and my dependence on others to validate me as I am. And thank you. That's all for me.
Well, I'll go ahead and just share a little bit. This is I can recognize what the path that you're on. I have done Myers-Briggs many times, and I recently show up as a INFJ. I consider myself an ambivert versus introvert. I definitely was more of an extrovert in my younger years, but as I've gotten older, I definitely feel more connected to the middle ground. And, as far as that path, I mean, that's a whopper of a question, and we could definitely do a whole room on that topic. But I think the first thing that kind of tugged at me when you were sharing is that journey of self-discovery and giving yourself enough time to slow down and give yourself space to ground yourself, meditate, and really connect to who you are as a person so that you can establish better boundaries and also start to bring awareness to where you could be stepping into people pleasing and putting the needs of other people ahead of yours, and that dysfunction that creates. And I definitely can relate to, I feel like HSPs need a lot of feedback because we're going into that deep dive of understanding or, receiving information, and it's a lot to process, and we deeply process and we hold on to that information longer. So it can really just be um, a lot to process as an HSP. But I think the skills and the different practices that we can put in place will help kind of designate who we are versus what other people want us to be, or different ways culture and society tells us to be. So the more that we can spend time alone with ourselves, we'll cultivate that relationship so that we can fully show up as our authentic self, and hold space for that, and also declare different boundaries, so that we can energetically keep holding on to who we are instead of losing ourselves or giving our power away to make other people feel comfortable, which is we tend to do as highly sensitive people. So let me know if any of that resonates with you, and I can elaborate as well, but let me know what you think.
It definitely does. Thank you so much. It's a difficult place to be in. I feel like I have the confidence in myself, but I find that because of my characteristics of all three of those things working against me, others may not, have accepted me the way that I am. And it's very hard to accept myself the way that I am when I get some kind of feedback that goes against that.
And yes, you are not alone in that feeling. I just want to say that. Excuse me, I'm having a difficult time with my throat here. I think that criticism from outside of ourselves really deeply affects people who are HSPs, empaths, more introvert. Um, and we have to remind ourselves that we are the minority, that we are not going to be able to keep up with 80% of the population, and our lifestyle choices need to be different to support our biology. So it's really just taking the time. I think one of my go-to foundational approaches is to look at Elaine Aron's rest guidelines, because to survive and thrive, we really need to cultivate a lifestyle that allows for more rest, more alone time, more processing time, time to just be. And then when we get that time, it helps structure our foundation. It helps us ground in who we are instead of being so fluid with the outside world and letting those opinions impact us and make us feel like we need to change or there's something wrong with us or, I'm just not doing it right. So that self-awareness and that practice of just getting quiet with ourselves and really studying what is coming up for us, what is happening inside our inner world, because we deeply connect with that, is key to how we operate in the world outside of ourselves. So I think the first step I would always say is to just slow down. I know that's not accepted in our society and it's not easy to do, but I think that is a priority that we have to put in place for us to live our best life and to reach our potential.
I just want to quickly jump in here and thank you, Tanya, for coming in and being vulnerable and asking this. I checked to see if I could buy myself a few more minutes when I heard your question because I'm like, oh, I really love this one. I did manage to do so, so I'll kind of answer here and then I'll hop off. Julie, I mean, you absolutely knocked it out of the park. I was like, I don't even know that I have anything else to say. So thank you, Julie, for just showing up in that way. And I couldn't agree more with the slowing down thing. I think it's an especially difficult place to be in when you do have an authority role and there's more eyes on you, there is more responsibility. The cool thing about HSPs and the things that you mentioned about yourself is that you can thrive because of these aspects of yourself, because you feel other people's energy. Like if every manager were an HSP, we'd be in a much better place in the world. Corporations would be functioning much more healthily. And so I just want to say that in terms of like, yes, as Julie was saying, it can be really hard when you feel like you don't fit the mold of what that position is supposed to be in, air quotes, or what that type of role is supposed to look like. And so the other just piece that I wanted to add to all of this is just on all the kind of like tactical and strategic type stuff that Julie mentioned, is just giving yourself an immense amount of grace and compassion because there isn't really space in the world still. And, I think that's our work as HSPs now. And thankfully, as we've talked about with, while the past 2 years have been hard, there are a lot of really beneficial changes happening in workplaces and things like that. And so this is kind of a moment in time where there is this opening, this crack for us as HSPs to add a little bit to this conversation, to share our experiences and to potentially have things that align with us a little bit more, and to push for those just a little bit more. And then, so yes, giving yourself a ton of grace in this process, knowing that it's not just going to be, even as you're kind of sitting with some of these things and trying to enact them, it's, it's not an overnight thing. You won't just go in, after this and be super confident and grounded in yourself. And like all those things are very important, but just being really, really compassionate with yourself on this kind of journey that we talked about. And yeah, I think that the final thing I would say, which is like potentially really difficult, and something that even is like uncomfortable to me, but something that others, and actually Alyssa's in the room right now listening, she's done a great job of this and talking about this, but like actually talking about your highly sensitive nature with your employer and just kind of sharing what this trait is, potentially even with your team. And of course, all that depends on the closeness of the grouping, but doing that can be a way where it doesn't have to be confrontational. It can just be sharing and informing, and potentially you could be surprised with how that goes over. So I just kind of wanted to mention that too. I am going to, I really want to quickly, just want to hear if you have anything to say. I'm going to have to go in the next minute here. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Julie, for having me. This has just been absolutely wonderful, which I knew it would be, but I feel like it exceeds expectations every time. I was a little bit tired this morning, but I was looking forward to this, and this definitely boosted my energy. So thank you.
Yes, Ben and Julie, thank you so much for creating this space, and I really appreciate the feedback. I already feel better about my thoughts that were going on before I asked my question. So I truly appreciate it.
I just wanted to, something that came up for me that I just felt called to add and share in regards to what Julie had said about slowing down. I feel like it's from like my perspective and personal experiences, the slowing down helps us to get in tune with our own truth instead of the truth of what everybody else outside of us is trying to say should be our truth. And so that slowing down allows us that quiet time to tap in to be like, what's honest for me? What's true for me? Yeah, that might be true for them over there. That's their experience, but that doesn't have to be mine, and that's not mine. And I'm allowed to have my own personal truth and my own experience.
I love that. And again, that's why I brought up, my go-to is definitely looking at Elaine Aron's research, and her suggestions or her recommendations is to slow down. And I can just say from my own personal experience, when I was having issues with my back, and I was getting a lot of feedback from a lot of different people, and what really ultimately happened is it afforded me time to get really inward with where am I going, what is important, what is my priority, and then how do I lay down the tracks to move in that direction. And that clarity came from slowing down, getting quiet, and really seeking the answers from within myself. So I just wanted to piggyback everything that Ben and Tanya have shared, because I just think ultimately that has been the awareness and clarity that allowed me to pivot and change the trajectory of where I was going, so that I was doing a better job at taking care of my needs and not abandoning myself in the process of moving forward. So whew, what a great room, you guys. I am just blown away by this conversation. And I do need to hop off as well. And so I hate to say goodbye, but I just appreciate so many of you hopping up on stage and sharing your story and asking your questions. And please do click on Ben's link and follow him and check out his club as well. We really all have wonderful discussions on topics that are meaningful and valuable to HSPs. So again, thank you for being here. We do have a room next Thursday, 11 a.m. Central. It's not yet on the calendar. I'll be squaring that away on Monday. But if you're familiar with Kelly Bass, she will be our guest in next week's room of Elevate HSP Voices. I'll take a break for Christmas, obviously, because that falls on a Thursday. And then our Christmas Eve does. And then the last week of December, we are going to meet with Mindy, and she's going to talk about how horses can help us be in touch with our sensitive nature. So that is kind of the wrap up of 2021. And if you're interested in rooms that are all about HSPs, please follow the club. I am really excited about 2022. I feel like I've kind of been quiet at the end of the year, but there's so many conversations that I've been working on getting on the schedule for January that I'm really excited about. So if you follow the club, you'll see the different rooms once you click on the club. And you can also click the little bell to have it ping you into the room when the room opens. So again, thanks so much for everyone being here. I wish we could spend more time in this room, but I have to hop off and run an errand. And I just appreciate all of you for showing up. Again, so grateful. And thanks again for being here. And I hope to see you in the next HSP Club. If you want to say any last quick words, I'll go ahead. And if everyone feels complete, we'll see you next time. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks for being here. Great discussion. Have a beautiful day.